Sup, nerds? Today we've got kind of a fun experiment. I don't think it's any secret to any longtime viewer of the channel that I have a passion for writing science fiction alongside all the business stuff that I do. Particularly, there is this hard sci-fi book that I have been writing with ChatGPT. I wrote it with ChatGPT in about a month last year during the month of November. At the time, I was pretty happy with how it came out, but since then, AI has gotten better, and I've also learned how to build custom GPTs. So I thought, what better way to test our new custom GPT trio, brainstormer, first drafter, and reviser, than on this specific book. Its title is Desecration, and it focuses on Earth in the year 2094, just after it is destroyed by an extraterrestrial AI, and its lone survivor has to team up with her alien rescuers to take down a battle station that it's secretly set up in the asteroid belt. Now, I have the opening scene ready for you guys as I have written it with ChatGPT last year, and that's what we're going to sort of use as the control group for our experiment. So what we're going to do is test this version of the scene against the version of the scene that has been revamped with my custom GPT trio, and we'll see which one you guys like better. And I'll start off by reading the first draft of this scene for you now. She gritted her teeth and muttered under her breath, drowning out the blaring alarms with sheer willpower. The pulsing red lights threw erratic shadows. The heat receded as she dragged herself forward. Her wheelchair. She must have left it behind. No time to go back for it. Not like this. Get to the escape pods, a distant voice rang out. Now! The voice trailed off as the door hissed shut. Launch sequence, initiating in 5, a mechanical, indifferent voice announced. Her head spun. Each pulse of the emergency lights seared into her eyes. Her heart thudded. The muscles in her arms screamed in protest, but they lifted her just high enough to reach the seat. 4, 3, the voice continued. An explosion rocked the whole station. The acrid tang of smoke clawed at her throat as she gripped the handle. The station's rocking motion swung her higher. She hauled herself into the seat and, with trembling hands, finally clicked the restraint into place. She reached for the window as if she could hold on to what was already lost. Through the fractured glass, Earth took its dying breaths. Minutes ago, a fiery spot the size of a hurricane erupted on its surface, devouring everything in its path. The cracked window refracted it into eerie light patterns that danced across the walls. 2, 1, the voice chirped. The escape pod rocked with a violent jolt as it flung itself from Asgardia. Every jolt of the pod sent sharp pain shooting through her shoulder. Her head struck the frame of the restraint. The memory of her mom's last hug flickered through her mind, the warmth of her arms, the sound of her laughter, before everything cut to black. Okay, so that was the scene as it currently stands. Normally, I would stick with the same scene and simply tweak things, add things, change things until I have something I like. But the way that the brainstorming GPT took the direction of the scene kind of demanded an entire rewrite. So that's what we're going to be working on today. So let's go to our first draft, custom GPT, and here we go. Let's add files, and we're going to go with the blueprint. This is my blueprint for desecration as we have it so far. Can you write a quick outline for the first scene that we can use to write it from. You can choose from one of your 28 different scene types. Okay, there we go. I don't really know how to start this. This is the first time I've ever done something like this. It stopped thinking. It's reading the documents. Thought for 30 seconds. Okay, well, right off the bat, I like where this is heading. Look at this. Scene type, inciting disaster, and rescue. Good. The main thing that we changed with the custom GPT was instead of it being a chronic condition that takes Flora's legs, it is actually, in this version, a accident that happens as a result of escaping some infrastructure, perhaps a ceiling panel, a support beam or something falls on her and sort of paralyzes her waist down, and she actually gets rescued by a crew member. And well, I won't spoil the whole thing. It's gonna be awesome. Let's see. POV intense, close third on Flora, past tense, keeps intimacy while letting the world feel large. I like that it's, thinking of a balance of two very important priorities. Target length 12 to 800 words. That's warranted given how much more substance that we've given to the scene in this version. But holy cow, I wonder if it can pull that off in one go, enough to play the disaster moment in vivid microseconds and end on a strong transitional hook. Yes. One line hook, opening image, and it uses promise, progress, payoff. Yes. Opening sentence, red stroke, groaning bulkhead. Okay. It is thinking a little bit more forward than I was hoping. We only really need to capture scene beats 1 through 4 for this. It kind of gave us 8. But Stride isn't even part of the story yet. Become principles, start with change and immediate threat. I like it. Suggested opening light. I'm not sure about that opening line though. It just sounds like a generic in medias res. Any of you might be authors. In medias res is Latin for in the middle of the action. It's exactly what it sounds like. It just refers to a opening scene that starts in the middle of the action. Usually this is a battle, but not always. In fact, I think some of the best in medias res openings are not a battle specifically, and instead the tension comes from somewhere else. A recent movie called Transformers 1 is a great example of this. They had a bit of a break-in heist kind of scene where instead the tension came from what is this main character doing? It's obvious that they're not supposed to be there doing what they're doing. When are they going to get caught? What's going to happen to them? That sort of thing, instead of just a pure adrenaline rush. So let's write let's go ahead and write the first draft scene. For now, I just want to focus on scene beats 1 through 4, where Flora is actually rescued and escapes Asgardia by the anonymous crewmate. Make sure it emotionally hits home what's going on and that it develops the characters in a way that is interesting to a viewer that is seeing these characters for the first time. All right, let's go ahead, see how it does. Okay, all of it sounds good. I hope you guys don't mind that I read ahead. I just wanted to make sure that it sounded good. I'm surprised. You guys saw how little prompting that took though, right? Let's see. Okay, this sounds pretty good. I just wasn't sure about the first line. It felt a little flat. Could you suggest 10 alternative lines? Each one should do 3 things. 1, it should set expectations going forward for the tone of the story. 2, it should make the reader curious. Bonus points if you can name a specific question that it plants in the reader's head. And 3, it should hint at the central conflict of the story, or at least some form of conflict. Perhaps the immediate conflict would be more appropriate in this scenario, but feel free to try different things. Excellent criteria. That's exactly the right way to treat an opening line. A contract with tone, curiosity, conflict embedded. Okay, the station screamed first and then the people caught on. That's pretty cool. Slightly ironic. Signals a story that blends horror with human frailty. Ooh, okay. Flora felt the floor tilt before she heard it break. That's interesting. Intimate, sensory, and grounded promises a tactile survival story. Gravity forgot her first. That is an opening line. Why is gravity failing and how does that connect to her fate? Physical and existential disorientation. That is like a pretty key theme in Desecration is just Flora has just so much that she goes through in like the first 2 chapters. And that like the whole trilogy is just her coming to terms with her new place in the cosmos. So this could be quite fitting. Poetic, fatalistic suggests loss of stability and identity. Okay, interesting. The alarms lied. The danger was already inside. That's a pretty cool opener. I feel like it would be more appropriate for some kind of a story where there's a monster chasing people through the space station. I do want to write a story like that in the future. I've been playing with a couple of ideas, but for now, I think we'd best move on just because that isn't this story. By the time the station realized it was dying, so did Flora. What connects her fates to the station's death? Human and machine entwined. Interesting. Reflective builds pathos before the action. That's interesting. I still think the gravity one is better. It's a little bit too short, but it's really good. Something deep in Asgardia snapped. A sound like bone. Too human for metal. Ooh, I do like that we're bringing up Asgardia faster. By the way, Asgardia is a real thing. It is the world's first nation, or will be the world's first nation, whose population is entirely off the surface of the earth, which is just a fascinating premise and something that I wanted to illustrate in this story since, it does take place maybe 70 years in the future from now. Although I haven't really heard anything of Asgardia since maybe 2019. At the time, they pretty much just had a satellite in space that you could upload whatever documents to that you wanted. Pretty cool. Also pretty far from a space nation. It'd be interesting to see where they're at now. Blurring of life and technology foreshadows the biotech themes. Gothic sci-fi, vivid sensory horror. I like that. Maybe a little bit offbeat for Desecration. It is, don't get me wrong, it tackles some pretty dark themes once it gets ready to do that, but it's not dark like all the time. So I don't think that's quite what we want. She didn't hear the explosion, only the air leaving her lungs. Flora had one rule for emergencies, don't freeze. But the station wasn't following rules anymore. Oh, I like that. Tone, character-driven, human competence, drama against entropy. That's also a pretty core theme. It's also a lot longer than the gravity one. I was like... Don't get me wrong, I would have been happy with the gravity one, but it felt just a little bit shorter than I had expected. I don't know. I'll play with either one of them and we'll see which one sounds better in its context. Light flickered, system screamed, and Flora realized she was the last calm heartbeat left. Dang. The station didn't explode. It peeled like skin. That's pretty banger. A little too adrenaline-ish for, I think, our purposes, but I do really like it. So, okay, let's do this then. We'll create a folder in our Google Drive. We'll call it Finding Forever Second Draft. Finding Forever is the name of the trilogy, by the way. Desecration is the first book in that trilogy. We want to go in that folder and then create the folder that is named Desecration. Okay, good. Google Docs, and we'll call it Desecration See, one, this is kind of the writing notation that I use. Because, see, like, everybody knows what chapter means. Like, I don't need the entire word chapter to, like, take up the space on the tab here when just C by itself does fine. So, it makes navigation easier. Now let's copy and then let's grab our two opening lines that we can't decide between. And then Gravity forgot her first. Yeah, right off the bat, I think the longer one is gonna just fit better. Let's replace this with she so it's not too repetitive. By the way, how long is this? Holy cow, it's 1,000 words. Yeah, the old version was like 200 words. I mean, it makes sense. There's much more of a story to be told in this version of the scene, which I kind of like. I think it's gonna hold people's attention a little better. The old version had a bunch of short scenes come after that one, which kind of made sense. She was going in and out of consciousness, but it also did feel a little choppy as well. Maybe that won't be so much of a problem here. I don't know, we'll see. But yeah, let me read this new draft for you. Flora had one rule for emergencies: don't freeze. But the station wasn't following rules anymore. She staggered down the slope of the tilting deck, one hand clamped over the gash on her side. The air was thick with metal dust and the burnt sugar tang of coolant. Sirens chased each other through the station's bones. Somewhere behind her, a voice kept calling her name through static. Flora, go! Then a pop and silence. The floor lurched. A low groan shuddered through the hull as if Asgardia herself had taken a breath to scream. A steel beam sheared loose from the ceiling and dropped. It hit her legs before she even saw it move. The impact was sound before pain. Then the world narrowed to white. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't feel below her hips. When her hearing came back, it was full of metal, raining, and the slow drip of something onto her cheek. Her own blood, probably. She tried to sit up. The beam didn't budge. Her breath came short and fast. No, no, no! The emergency lights cut out, leaving only the dull glow of the viewport. And outside that, a cold, pale curve of earth. Fractured cloud lines, a web of fire near the equator where the missile impact had been. She remembered it like a dream now. The white streaks from the surface, the alarms delayed half a second too long, the way the commander's voice had stayed steady until the floor came apart from under him. She clawed at the floor, trying to reach the lever for the emergency foam sealant. Her fingernails split against the diamond plating. The lever was just out of reach. She laughed once, sharp and humorless, then started sobbing without realizing it. A shape moved in the smoke. Someone, suit torn, visor half fogged, was crawling toward her. The figure's headlamp threw the beam's shadow across the corridor wall like a gallows rope. Hey! Flora's voice cracked. Here! Here! The figure staggered upright. Male, or maybe not. Hard to tell under the cracked visor. A badge glinted. Crew insignia, medical wing. The figure leant to the beam and knelt beside her. Stay still, he said. Voice filtered through a punctured respirator. Can't. Legs. He set a hand on her shoulder. Firm, gloved, strangely gentle. He then jammed a pry bar under the beam. The deck groaned again. A burst of sparks showered them both. Flora tried to lift with him, but her arms trembled, useless. Stop. Just breathe, he said. His tone wasn't commanding exactly. It was human, exhausted but sure. It pulled her focus out of the panic for half a heartbeat. The beam lifted, an inch, maybe two. He shoved a storage crate under it. Again, he grunted. Another inch. Pain spiked up her spine. She screamed. Almost there. He wedged the bar again, and this time the metal screeched, shifted, and slid aside far enough for him to drag her free. Her legs looked wrong. One boot was gone. The other foot was turned 90 degrees the wrong way. "Don't look," he said. Too late. He slung her arm over his shoulder and half carried, half dragged her toward the escape pods. Each step jolted through her like being punched from the inside. The corridor was coming apart behind them, cables snapping like whips, the low boom of decompressing chambers sealing off one by one. "Pod bays this way," he said, mostly to himself. Flora's mouth was full of copper. She managed, "How many left?" "Doesn't matter. You're getting one." "Not without you." He didn't answer. The deck gave way under them, dropping them half a meter. He caught her before she hit the exposed conduit below. His breath hissed through the cracked mask, fast but steady. There was a burn mark along the side of his neck, fresh, ugly. She realized, suddenly, that he wasn't just hurt. He was dying. They reached the pod bay. 2 pods gone. One remained, half docked, its systems whining in the thin air. The bay doors juddered open and shut, fighting to stay sealed. He set her down against the bulkhead and knelt by the pod's console. Fingers flew across the controls, practiced, sure. He was overriding safety locks, she realized. The pod wasn't ready. "Wait," she rasped. "You'll..." He didn't look up. "Pressure's dropping. You won't survive another minute out here. Neither will you." He finally met her eyes. Through the cracked visor, she could see only one, brown, rimmed with soot. There was something calm there. Not acceptance, exactly. Determination, stripped bare. "Flora," he said, "you trained the new med techs last cycle, right?" She blinked, disoriented. "How do you..." He cut her off. "Then you'll live. That's enough." He scooped her up. She weighed nothing in partial gravity, and shoved her into the pod seat. Straps snapped over her chest. She grabbed his arm. "Don't do this." He pressed a data tag into her hand, a small, scuffed rectangle with his ID etched half off. "Give this to anyone who listens," he said. "Tell them..." The hole screamed. The deck split, fire venting into vacuum. Air fled in a single tearing gust. He slammed the pod hatch. Through the narrowing gap, she saw his gloved hand braced against the door, and behind him, the corridor exploding into light. Then, the pod ejected. Silence hit like a wall. The station fell away behind her, a halo of debris spinning in black. For a moment, she thought she could see him in the wreckage. Tiny, weightless, caught in the glow of a ruptured reactor. But it was probably just a reflection. Her chest convulsed. No air. She tore at the straps, gasping. The pod's AI murmured something about trajectory and oxygen ratios, but she couldn't hear it over the sound in her head. Metal bending, that voice saying her name, and then nothing. Through the viewport, the earth rolled beneath her, half on fire. The pod tumbled, stabilizers kicking in. She stared at the ID tag in her shaking hand. The engraving was scorched, unreadable. A laugh broke out of her. Dry, cracked, wrong. Then she pressed the tag against her chest, shut her eyes, and finally let the tears come. Outside, Asgardia broke apart in silence. The light of it washed her face white, then red, then nothing at all. So what do you think, guys? Draft 1 or draft 2? I know it doesn't show because of how little prompting and editing went into creating the second draft, but a lot of work went into this, both into building the GPT and into building the blueprint document that got everything started. But that's all I have time for today. If you're interested in mastering AI or in having me build you a custom AI automation for your business, feel free to hit the link in the description and set up a free one-on-one call with me to discover the possibilities. And with that, be sure to leave a like, share your thoughts with the class, and before you subscribe, make sure you know what you're doing, because it ain't easy being at the top. I'll see you guys next time.